right, so welcome to Ecommerce Straight Talk. We're here with Adan De La Cruz, talking about all things e-commerce, trends, updates, what's going on in the world of e-com. Adan, how are you doing?
Doing great, man.
Awesome.
Doing good.
You know,
we're
about
sunny Florida, so
yeah,
every day is a vacation.
I'm on the West Coast, and I don't know if you've sort of heard, but it was 111 here yesterday.
Yeah, you guys are in a furnace, man. What is going on over there?
Yeah, no, it's nuts. It's supposed to be just as hot today, and then tomorrow's like 102. It's supposed to cool down to 102.
Wow.
But yeah, being in Oregon, it's like very rarely do we get things this hot. I can't remember the last time it was over 100 degrees. So
wow.
Yeah,
I was seeing the news. It was like 130 in some parts of like the Valley of California somewhere. That's insane to me. I didn't even know temperatures can get that high.
No, dude. And the worst part is like I was, my wife and I were talking like, hey, we should go to the coast. Like, oh yeah, brilliant idea. We're a little too late to that show. Like coast is just packed. Like the streets were empty this weekend.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I still had to get stuff done. But yeah, so talking, sort of segueing into e-commerce in the summer and 4th of July. It's interesting to sort of see the patterns, the purchase behavior, the buying patterns that have sort of happened over the past year. 2020 was a wacko year. Moving into 2021. I don't know. Are you seeing any, sort of performances and products sort of shift? Anything of that nature?
A lot actually. Well, I can kind of talk about a few of them. So as you know, I'm currently heading up success at Revealbot, which is automation software for Facebook. A lot of e-com folks and agencies use us for just managing ad accounts, automating strategies, things of that nature. So I'm in a unique position where I get to talk to a lot of e-com brand owners, digital marketers, strategists, you name it. And it's interesting to see the kinds of challenges and things that are going on in the industry right now. Some of the things I can point out to is, obviously with the iOS 14 change, attribution definitely is something that is becoming an issue. Now, some folks will say like, oh, it's not a big deal. But listen, I'm only talking representative of what I've seen with real people who are spending real money, right? So one thing that kind of struck out to me is the fact that prior to the iOS update, it was pretty normal, right? I would say typical to see some kind of variance in attribution not being up to snuff, right? Like usually like 10-15% is what I saw on average.
Yeah.
Post iOS 14.5 rollout, I've noticed the change be up to almost 50% in terms of inaccuracies, which, if you're an e-com brand owner, marketer, like that is rough, because that means that you can't trust, more than half of the data you get from Facebook. So outside attribution, I would say right now is key to a lot of folks. I've been kind of, and keep in mind, this is not a pitch to this company. This is just something that I've been seeing. I've been running into this company called Get Elevar as a solution for, and there's a bunch of them. There's Hyros and whatever, Supermetrics, but Get Elevar is interesting because they use Google Analytics and Google Tag Managers for attribution, and coincidentally, they can push all that data to a spreadsheet which Revealbot can use because it's all third-party stuff. But
interesting.
Yeah, man. But that's one thing for sure that I've seen that's definitely becoming more and more current and been popping up in my ecosystem a lot. In terms of other, well, here's another interesting thing, and this is my observation. And this is just chatter. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not in these ad accounts, so this might not be 100% accurate, but we do have a group where we kind of see essentially our top clients, and there's definitely some chatter there about existing strategies that don't seem to be working anymore, or they're not scaling the same. So there's definitely some changes. I mean, it's definitely affecting a lot of folks. I don't know what your thought is on that. I'm curious to know what you've seen, considering your your background and what you guys do.
Yeah. So in essence, it's just chaos.
Mm,
Right. That's the bottom line. It seems to be every account's a little different. Right.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that too.
so we used to be able to have, cookie cutter strategies that worked for just about everybody. And now it's like each brand is so different in its own little way because our targeting options have changed, right? Our like, even if we're still targeting broad audiences, we only get a sliver of that. So let's say we put in Facebook, hey, we want to touch men and women 19 to 64, right? That's 200
Mm-hmm.
million people, whatever, however many it is, right? Well, Facebook's still only going to give us 1 to 10% of that, right? So it's still a small chunk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, how can you continue to touch, if you have this giant bubble of who your market is, and you're only touching 1 to 10% of that market, how can you continue to touch the other percentages of that market? So then that's when you have to get a little creative. And before, we used to be able to just create different lookalike campaigns and do all that, but
It's not working
yeah, it's not
as
working.
much.
And so we're finding that we're using interest groups, stacking up interest groups. But even on top of that, the worst part is that even when we're testing right now, it's like we can take what we learn and sort of apply it, but at the end of the day, we still don't know whether or not that's the new normal, right?
Right.
Because it's still changing.
Yeah.
So even
Even
tests
now.
that even tests that we did yesterday that might work today, tomorrow they might not work, right? So it's just a constant sort of battle that we're pushing through, and so it's just about being conservative and focusing on your product, that market, and your creative. And so I think
Yeah.
those are three things that you need to focus on.
I think Facebook must be really kind of working towards some solutions on this. I can't imagine, they'd be kind of just laying back and, you know, just leaving things as is. I know that they're working on some modeling things and whatnot to kind of help. But with all that being said, I can tell you two different things that I've been telling folks, in terms of, because listen, I have a lot of people that come to me and they're like, hey man, like what would you do in this situation, right? Like what,
Yeah.
and I'm a traditional marketing guy, right? So I always look at things from the lens of principles. I look at things through the lens of, I don't look at any one traffic source as like the be all end all of my campaigns or my marketing journey, or my ability to generate a result, right? So I look at Facebook and all these other platforms as just a vehicle, and sometimes these vehicles change, right? One of the things that is kind of interesting, and this is kind of at least what I've learned, and I don't know how accurate this is. I mean, this is just what I'm seeing in terms of what seems to be working for some folks is, number one, they're keeping, in terms of campaigns and trying to figure out how to optimize, how to generate traffic. iOS 14.5 comes into play once you take people out of the Facebook app. But as long as they're in the Facebook app and they're in the Facebook ecosystem, they're not necessarily affected too much, at least from my understanding. And I can tell you that, like, for folks who do lead generation, instead of generating leads off-site, what they're doing is they're using the Facebook lead forms, Facebook lead form objective more, and kind of just forgetting, just bypassing that altogether. The other thing, when it comes to just principles, you mentioned lookalikes, right? So one of the
Hmm.
things I've been advising, and this is something that I would do personally, is like, look, just because you can't generate highly or high quality lookalike audiences on Facebook, it doesn't necessarily mean you still can't reach those folks, because it's just a matter of changing the channel. And what I mean by that is, maybe you're driving traffic to a landing page, and you're building lookalikes on Google, or maybe you're building audiences for YouTube. Maybe the strategy is no longer to target folks on using lookalikes, but rather using different channels to reach those folks, right? The other thing is taking ownership of your first party data, man. Go
Yeah.
back to collecting emails and owning the traffic source itself, right? If you have a name and an email address, obviously that creates more work for you as a marketer, right? Or as a brand, but at the very least, you can control that traffic. Um, and there's no, there's no iOS 14 that's gonna stop you from emailing somebody,
Yeah, and I
So I
think
mean,
to sort of segue that, I think first party data is so important for brands to like have control over.
definitely.
We've been sort of taking for granted so much, like utilizing platforms like Facebook, where we're
Oh
just
yeah.
like,
Oh, we've been
it,
spoiled,
they
man. Are you kidding
they
me?
they
The
have the
golden years are
data.
over, man.
Yeah, they have the data. We'll just pay them, and then they'll figure out people for us, right? Like,
hmm
and that's over. But I'm fine with that. Like, honestly, like it's just you got to step up our game a little bit. It's not even that
hmm
much. The cool thing is Apple and Facebook have come to an agreement. So starting June 30th, so basically at the end of the month, Apple is going to start passing off purchase events to Facebook.
Mm.
So that last event, whatever your last event is, they're going to send that off. So it's going to be interesting too, because what does that do? That's just another change that interrupts everything, right? So anything that we've had going on this month that we've sort of been trying to figure out is now going to
Yeah.
go out the window, and we're going to have to restart all over again next month. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, listen,
it's
I mean,
crazy.
I feel like that's kind of the nature of the beast with Facebook, man. It's one of those things that I hate, right? But
Mhm.
um, a big part of me also likes that to some degree, only because I tend to stick to principles, right? And I feel like if you stick to principles, whatever obstacles are put in front of you, you'll be able to overcome, right? As long as you understand principles. And I think, at least for guys like us in the marketing industry, right? Whether you're doing econ, whether you're doing lead gen or whatever, um, and I've seen these comments, man. I mean, it's not just me, uh, wishing my feelings on people, but uh, I kind of feel like, hey, this creates a bigger opportunity for the guys who've been in the game for a long time, have hustled and just kind of go through these barriers. And unfortunately, that's a part of Facebook. We have to deal with. And I think it presents a big opportunity, really, for folks who really just want to get in there and grind it out and figure this stuff out. Because the reality is, man, businesses are lazy, right? I can't tell you how many businesses that I've like coached or worked with or consulted. And to your point, right? Oh yeah, everything is so easy. You just create lookalikes and whatever. And people tend to because it's so easy, they tend to not do the other things that make a business, which is to focus. That one of my mentors taught me. Um, he's had this phrase that the number one enemy in business is the number one, right? The one of anything is always a bad thing. You can't have one
Mhm.
client, you can't have one traffic source, you can't have, one source of income. The worst number in business is one, and that's always stuck to me because you have situations like this that come across, and at the end of the day, none of us control Facebook, so you can't rely on just a one trick pony, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw that like coming out 2019, before the pandemic even hit. It's like omni-channel is the way to go. It is the future. I don't know how many times I've harped on this. The sheer fact that, of what's going on with the iOS issues, I think is actually beneficial, because it now forces brands to have a different mindset. Everyone for so long has been so focused on ROI, which makes sense, right? If you're a new company, you need cash flow. ROI is super important, but you cannot live or die by ROI. Otherwise, you will die, right?
Yeah,
And at a
absolutely.
certain point, you have to sort of elevate your game, and you have to start taking risks where you may not know the full like picture of it, right? You know the end result, you know the sales and the revenue you're getting, but you may not know where everything comes from, and that's okay, right? It's annoying, right? And we've had it very, really good with Facebook and giving us all this data, but even then, even in the best of times, Facebook hasn't been 100% accurate. Google Analytics hasn't been 100% accurate. Like, these platforms still aren't like all the way there. So it's sort of like we have to look at the big picture of How much revenue are we bringing in? How much money are we spending across all platforms? If we do XYZ thing in combination with each other, will we see a higher result? And that's how you determine that formula through your MER, your marketing efficiency rating. And so I think making those adjustments and helping brands really shift that mindset, which is very tough, right? No one likes to change,
100%.
right?
100%.
Chaos is sort of inevitable. And being a business owner or running a business or running anything really, it's like you just have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and
100%.
that's really where we're at. Now taking that, and I know I've just sort of like jumped right over it, but I'd love to hear more about Revealbot and what you guys got going on there.
Sure. Well, look, I mean, Revealbot is it's an automation platform, really. It started about 5 years ago as a Slack kind of a tool. They're based out of Moscow, and it's a great team, man. They build a fantastic product, and basically, it's a product really for. It's really a product for marketers. I kind of sometimes the way I describe it is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? Where a lot of folks come to the platform for to utilize one tool in the suite of tools that we have. Most of the time, it's for automation, smart rules. Basically, it's these are the kinds of rules that you really can't do in Facebook native. Interestingly enough, it's actually we also have a higher priority level of API access than Facebook native, which is kind of weird, considering native is part of the integrated into Ad Manager. But yeah, it allows you to create rules and affect actions on your ad account that you normally wouldn't be able to do with an Ad Manager. So it's very powerful in that sense. The other thing is, the whole idea of the Swiss Army knife is, I tell folks like, hey, you can come to the platform, use the thing that you want, but there's a lot of power in using a lot of the other tools together. So, for example, we have a function called bulk creation, which it's just like your typical bulk creation tool that you would find at any other platform. You put in some copy, you put in some images, and it just spins up multiple variations. The only key difference with Reveal is that you can take a lot of those initial, let's say, bulk creations, layer rules on top of them to, let's say, I don't know, maybe you want to split test and figure out which ads are winners. You can then layer on other rules on top of that take your winners and automatically adjust budgets, auto scale them, downscale them based on performance. So it actually takes a lot of the things that you would normally do as a marketer to go into the ad account and periodically check and make modifications. Well, if you know exactly what those things are, you can actually set those processes on autopilot, which is crazy. Especially for folks in the e-com space that are dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of products. I mean, it's a total game changer, right? So yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's a really great tool. They actually offer a 14-day trial if anybody wants to check it out. And you'll probably be talking to somebody like me if you need some help setting it up. So that's kind of what I do, is I help folks, take a look at what they're doing and kind of help them implement it. And sometimes I have to turn people away, believe it or not, because this is not a tool that is like it's not a silver bullet, right? So it's not something that can just take your marketing and automatically fix it. Because believe it or not, we have folks that come in with businesses or campaigns that aren't engineered properly, right?
Yeah.
And automation can't fix that, right? Because if you put garbage into automation, you just get garbage out of it. So you need to obviously understand what you're doing in your business, what your metrics are, what your numbers are, what your goals are. And then once you have those things, then using automation makes sense,
No, absolutely. And I think really, how we use it in our agency is really to help increase efficiency, right? It's like, how can we trim the fat on an account?
100%.
And so that's how we use Revealbot. And the problem is with native rules, they just don't work. It's so odd.
Yeah, man. Isn't that weird? I mean, you would think, listen, I've been to Facebook, I think twice in the New York headquarters.
Mhm.
And as impressive as Facebook, I don't know if you've ever been to any of their headquarters, but it's very, very impressive in terms of how big the organization is.
Yeah.
But something I've realized being there, for the 2 times that I was invited there, is how disorganized the organization is. Because you have like teams and teams of people that work on subset of the product, and then what ends up happening is like any little change that happens goes up multiple levels of support, or command, I guess. And it's kind of interesting. I had the displeasure of being in certain communications with some of their teams, and the initial thought was, holy cow, man, these guys are like all over the place. Like no one
Yeah.
the right foot doesn't know what the left foot is doing, and like clearly it shows in the end product, right? Because you have things that like you would think would work and they don't,
Yeah.
natively.
Well, that reminds me of a story. So we launched a book with one of the VP of product marketing over at Facebook. She wrote a book. We helped her launch it. We didn't get New York Times bestseller. We're like 11, only the top 10 for the week in sales
Mm-hmm.
get it. We were 11th. It was the same week that Michelle Obama released her book.
Ah,
So it was like, yeah.
it's impossible, man.
But we made a bunch of other lists, the Wall Street Journal best times and all this other stuff. But so her and her husband both work at Facebook, and they've been there since like it started.
Wow.
And they were at the campus there, in the Bay Area. And so it was like we were working together, and then like Facebook went down for like a day or two, right? This happens randomly all the time, right? And I just hit them up. I was like, hey, what's going on? And they're basically like, no one knows, everyone's hiding, right? Who broke it?
Oh man.
It's like no one knows what happened and how to fix it. It's just
multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, just chaos.
No one knows a thing.
Oh man,
That's
yeah,
funny.
it's nuts. But no, yeah, Facebook, I swear, if they could figure out, they would be the best if they could figure out how to like take like Amazon level of support and move it to Facebook is like the worst support team
Oh my god, yes,
on the face of the earth. And
yes.
even for
no
those
shade, don't ban my ad account. No shade, but still, I
no,
mean, that
the
is
problem,
true.
I think the problem is like there's so many different layers, right? And there's
Yeah.
layers of security for the support staff. So like if you talk to them, you can talk to somebody in Austin, you submit a ticket, they get the ticket. Once it's completed on their end, once they hit complete, like they don't even know if it's fully done. They just assume it is, and they can't go back to it, right? They can't look into it again, none of that. And so it's just constantly, it's like a round robin. Who are you going to get this time?
Yeah, it's a
So
luck of the draw sometimes, sometimes you'll get somebody who actually like reads the ticket and like, has some form of sympathy.
yeah.
And then most of
like,
the time it's just deny.
Yeah. Or knows what they're actually doing or what's going on, right? Because I imagine too, like I don't know for sure, but I imagine they probably turnover rate's probably pretty high. They probably jump around a lot,
Yeah,
I think I would say Snapchat probably has the best sort of account managers because they're all in one location and they all chat with each other.
It's funny to me. It's not like they don't have the money to have a good support system. I can't imagine. I mean, I look. Granted, I know there's millions of people advertising on Facebook, right? But I'm in agreement with you. I feel like for the amount of money that's being spent on the platform, I feel like there should be some level of accountability on Facebook side. They've operated, and listen, as a marketer, I'm very grateful for their platform. So no shade towards Facebook, but with that being said, they need to get their shit together.
Yeah.
I mean, like, come on, man, it's been 10 years. Like, let's figure this out, guys.
Well, and that's where we sort of sit with, we have the iOS 14.5 and then the 14.6 update. And I think we're a little bit above 70% adoption rate, which is pretty good. But so over time, it'll increase stability due to that. The thing is like we're still sort of, everyone's still sort of like relying on Facebook to figure this out. We're like,
no one's coming to save you, man.
Yeah. When in reality, we should be looking at long-term strategies and benefits. And
100%.
I don't know why that seems harder than it is, because it's not. It really isn't. It's just we've been so used to quick wins for so long that it's hard to focus on long term.
That's what I'm saying, man. I feel like everybody's been spoiled. You know, you look. I feel like the golden age of Facebook is over. I think this new phase that we're entering is going to force it's going to force people to really think about the business and really think about processes and make really smart decisions. Because look, the cost of advertising is not going down; it's only going up, which means that everything you do has to be even much more effective. And this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier about opportunities for people in the digital marketing space. Is that uh, if you understand things on a principle level, then you can overcome a lot of these challenges. But just by understanding, like, hey, this is this too will pass. But at the same time, you can also engineer your way out of problems if you can holistically look at the problem for what it is, right? Um, the attribution is one thing, but uh, just principles in terms of campaign creation is another. Like I can't even, like, for example, I can't tell you how many people I talk to that come to Revealbot like on a trial, and they're just checking it out, and like ecom folks, and you can relate to this because you're in that space. Like AOV, right? Average
Mhm.
order value is probably one of the critical components to running an ecom store, right? If you don't have, I don't know. I usually say about $50. If it's not within that range, it's kind of hard to scale, like
Yeah.
on Facebook, as if you're paying for mid-price product and you're paying for advertising, you're either going to break even or make very little profit, which is going to make it very hard for you to scale. I can't tell you how many folks I come across where their AOV is like $10 or $15, and they want to use automation to scale, and it's like, that's a that's a that's not an automation problem. That's a marketing
Yeah.
brand problem, business problem. Um, but
No,
yeah, I don't know.
it's
Thoughts on that?
so
Curious.
like AOV, I think in our checklist, right? AOV is like one of the top, right? First of all, do you have good product market fit, right? That's always number one. Does the market actually want what you're selling? But AOV is like number two. And I'd say like for us, I'm happy whenever I see it anything over $100. I'm like ecstatic. Like, there we go. All right, cool. When we get anything below
We
like
got a live one.
6, yeah, whenever we get below 60, that's when things get interesting. You can still do it. You can still scale pretty high, just depending on the product. How you can the idea is even when you're dealing with products under that, you're looking at how to bundle, how to increase AOV. That's what you're looking for. So yeah, and very rarely, I mean, I don't know how, maybe we've worked with one company over the past 3 years who had an AOV of like under $20. It is very tough because you're directly competing with Amazon now, right? That's it. Like Amazon sort of owns that world. And on top of that, you're, even with your cost for CPMs and stuff, you're just not going to, it's not going to be cost effective. But, sort of taking from there, talking about products and whatnot, and sort of looking at like what's been working and strategies that have been working. Have you noticed anything that's sort of new or trending or out of the ordinary that's been working lately for strategies on Facebook or Instagram or any social platform?
So this differs really for every type of, this really depends on the business model, right? So I've been fortunate enough to be on the looking glass side of things, to talk to a lot of businesses, and I mean, there's so many different business models out there: ecom, lead gen, agencies, traffic arbitrage. Actually, it's kind of interesting. I've met a couple of arbitrage guys, and if we're talking about ecom specifically, I think the one thing that I've noticed, at least with probably our better performing clients, is that they take into consideration the full spectrum end to end of a marketing campaign. And what I mean by that is, I'll have folks who come on the platform and they're essentially a one trick pony. They have an ad, they have a landing page, and this is what they've been they've built their entire business on, is running these ads and having a landing page and maybe having, a couple of discount codes here and there, and they alternate products, but more or less the system or their SOPs are simplistic in nature, right? But the bigger brands, I mean, the main difference I would say between these smaller brands and the bigger brands in terms of strategy and what they do, is that the bigger folks, and I'm talking, when I say bigger, I mean people who are spending, 100,000 a month to 50 to even 100,000 a day. Okay, is they have campaigns. They have very good structure of campaigns. That's number one, right? So they have campaigns that are for testing. They have campaigns that are for prospecting new audiences and different interests. They have cold campaigns, warm campaigns, hot campaigns. These are different parts of the funnel that they're essentially targeting, retargeting for all those funnels. But that is the one key difference I've noticed, is that there's a deeper level of understanding that, hey, a business is more than just a one-trick pony. There are other things that there are other levers in the business that you can push and tweak. Kind of circling back to this whole AOV thing. The way I kind of look at it is like, look, you have, average order value and, the cost to acquire a customer, they're like offense and defense, right? So with average order value, these are things that you can control in your business. The cost per acquisition is not something that you can always control, because a lot of that has to do with how many competitors are in the space. It has to do with how Facebook is feeling that day in terms of CPMs. There's
sure.
not much you can do about your cost, but there's a lot that you can do in terms of engineering the business and flowing traffic through your business in a smart way that enables you to generate enough revenue to offset CPA. And I find that if you can figure out offense, the defensive part of it kind of sorts itself out, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I would say that. I mean, I would say take inventory, man, of the business, and also all the different levers. And I think that the folks who tend to those levers, uh, um, on the front end as well as the back end, tend to succeed at a much higher ratio than the
Awesome.
one trick ponies, I would say.
Yeah, and I think to sort of jump on what you said there, when
It's a good
we're
conversation, man. I love this. This is good shit.
yeah, when we're looking at account structures like you're talking about, we this happened maybe about a year and a half ago. We moved to like a very simplified structure, right? Simplifying everything. There was one point in time where we had like one ad account. It was just a disaster, just ad sets everywhere, right? Because it was like constantly testing, but testing wasn't structured, simplified, in a simplified way either. And so we sort of learned from that, like, hey, this is just a giant mess that we have to like, how we're building our reports. We have to like manually build the reports by going in there and like taking all the data that we want, right?
Oh God.
and so that led us down the account simplification path, right? Which then led us to, you have Facebook came out with the Power 5 strategy, right? Which they definitely stole from some agency somewhere, right? And it was like, oh hey, yeah,
that's what they
cool.
do, by the way. They don't do any support. They just rip off whatever's working.
Yeah.
Hey, would you like to be on our blueprint?
Yeah, that's what they do. So they copy some stuff, and or then they just rename it something. Like, so for example, they just came out with this thing called Discovery Commerce, because one of our clients was like, hey, you know what, Facebook came out with this thing called Discovery Commerce. We're curious to learn more about that. Like, let's talk about it. I was like, okay. So I go like, what is Discovery Commerce? I look online. There's a blueprint course for it. So I'm like, cool, I'll take it. And like, it was like a Friday afternoon. I took it like an hour. Took me an hour to go through the whole thing. It was like, a ton of different videos. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. Like, all this is just e-commerce marketing, like 101. And it's just like the way that they sort of describe everything. They changed the names. They used the word liquidity quite a bit. Placement liquidity, ad spend liquidity, audience liquidity, and it's like, what? Like, why are you trying to make it more complicated? Like,
stop trying to make this a thing. This
yeah,
is
it's
not
like
a thing.
It's like that kid at school that liked to use big words just to sound smart. Like, I was like, oh, this is painful. Like,
You learned that in the dictionary today.
I could create one video in 10 minutes that would describe everything that took me an hour to learn. No, yeah, it's interesting to see that. On top of that, I think,
That's funny.
Looking at sort of like, Facebook and running ads and everything. Really what we see is going back to omni-channel and the ecosystem. The ecosystem is so important to have everything rolling, right? It would be like if you went into the Amazon rainforest and you have this lush ecosystem where everything's sort of thriving together, right? And everything has its place. That's sort of how we have to look at it, right? Do you want a desert with one tree? And that one tree is your channel, and that's a siloed channel, and you can call it Facebook, you can call it whatever you want, whatever channel it is. Or do you want this lush ecosystem? And you have to build it. And yes, it is painful. It's a grind, right? Nothing's easy. And it's becoming ever more difficult every day. Like the barrier to entry keeps on increasing, right? And so I think too, talking about the ecosystem and then also looking at what was it, 2017. So if we rewind back from early 2000s through 2016, on average, there were about 600 to 700 new agencies, new business forms every year. There were agencies, marketing agencies. 2017, over 7,000 new agencies in 1 year. And that's because of Facebook, right? Now, I don't know how many since then. I just remember seeing that data. I don't know how many since then, but I'm willing to bet by the end of this year, that number will have dwindled. And sort of what it will follow too, which is very sad, is it will follow small business, right? Because small business is going to dwindle. Like these updates, these iOS updates, who they really hurt the most isn't Facebook. It's really small businesses, those mom and pops, businesses where they may have like the owners are married and they work there. Like that's their job. They basically just created a job for themselves. Like most people think if you own a business, you're rich. Well, that ain't the case.
No, it's not the case.
And so that's what I think.
You're the first free employee.
Yeah.
You're the only one that's not getting paid, typically.
Yeah.
Funny how that works.
And so I think it's going to be interesting to sort of see that dynamic. And to be honest, I don't see anything popping up that could fix that. You add insult to injury, Amazon has just increased market share over the past year.
Here's a question for you. What do you think about Apple? I kind of see this as a big power move by Apple. Do you think Apple will produce some kind of advertising component or business?
Yep.
Because I mean, look, Apple owns the majority share of all phone handsets in the United States. I mean, they have insane amounts of leverage. They are the gatekeepers essentially.
I think we already are starting to see this. So they're already beta testing search ads through Safari, of course, their native apps. Excuse me. And they in September, they launched the latest phone, whatever that's going to be, and they're pushing for the newest update within the next year is going to be this sort of social mechanism through the phone. So how can you connect with people, sort of like Facebook, but via the phone? So I know that they've been talking about
NFC or something, or
more like messaging, multi chat, FaceTime, like all these different ways to be able to just connect with communities. Right. That's really what it's about. So Facebook has understood this for a while. Like community is what Facebook is all about. That's why they created groups, Facebook groups. So yeah, I definitely think Apple is jumping on this train for sure.
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
They're collecting all this data. They got to use it somehow, right? And then not only that, but I guarantee you this deal that Apple made with Facebook, where they'll send that purchase event, I guarantee Facebook has to pay for that. Guarantee, right?
You know what? To be honest with you, I know this might seem counterproductive because I use Facebook, a lot, for even the things I do. But I think it's good, man. I'm actually happy that there are other players, because one of my biggest fears as a marketer is that uh, it seems like as time goes on, there's less and less players, or there's less and less ways to get your message out there, right? So you have, like Facebook is notorious for buying all of their competitors, and if they can't buy them, they'll copy them, and that kind of stifles innovation, man. And even though Apple is kind of a big conglomerate themselves, I think it's interesting that that they would go this route, and just again, if you look at it from the lens of how I look at things, and I've said this a few times on our call, but like if you're a principle based agency and you understand principles, it doesn't matter what channel, it doesn't matter what traffic source, you'll be able to make something work. And as a marketer, that's the part that excites me, is that, hey, there's a new player, a new player has entered the match, and I'm curious to see how that plays out,
Well, I think I do like, diversity as far as like competition. I think the biggest problem is we see that there's 7 corporations now that control over 50% of the market. But I am, especially working in the e-commerce and retail world, I am more concerned with Amazon than I am Apple. Now, the good news is, even though Amazon has like scooped up, Amazon and Walmart both have scooped up.
I buy stuff from Amazon, but I'm not a big fan of they have like predatory business model for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh no, for sure. And they treat their employees like trash. The sort of the glass half full, I wouldn't say it's a good thing, but glass half full is they have 150% turnover rate. That means for every 10 people they hire, 15 are leaving. And at some point in time, they're going to go through the entire blue collar service-based industry workforce. Like if they keep that up. So the market is sort of forcing their hand there. And it sort of it goes to show, like, they can use automation, right? They're my wife's brother is on the up in Montreal. They're building Amazon place up there that's fully automated.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, I've seen them. They have them in China, actually. I don't know if you've seen them. They have these little rolling carts that are fully autonomous, man. It's insane.
Yeah, I've seen those. No, you still have to have people work there, and I think that's where a lot of them get hurt too, is and get injured, and where injuries come from. But yeah, no, it's sort of Amazon's the new company man. It's like you get paid by them, and you might as well just get paid in Amazon bucks, because you're going to turn around and spend it at Amazon.
Yeah, right. Like Disneyland.
It's like this vicious.
Would you like some Mickey dollars?
Oh man, but yeah, overall, at the end of the day, I think that we're still going to do really well, especially those who can afford to pivot. Small business, not so much, but it'll sort of find its way back. The way the market works is sort of how it happens. There's the pendulum has to swing hard any given way. So, but
there's always going to be turbulence for sure.
Yep. But hey, I want to say thanks for coming on, and thanks for chatting with me, Adan.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Where can people connect with you online?
Probably the best place is going to be my Facebook. So it's facebook.com/Adan De La Cruz, AdanDelacruz. Or you can just Google me, LinkedIn or something like that. I'm not too active on Facebook, even though I'm usually active on the ad manager side, not so much on the platform side, but probably there, or LinkedIn would probably be the best way to reach out if you have any questions.
Cool, man. Hey, well, I appreciate you coming on and chatting.
Yes, sir, man. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It was a great chat.
Talk to you later. Bye.